Hello and welcome back to the channel and the second one in our judging video where we're looking at how to judge, the sorts of things you look for, and principally the quarterfinal matchup between Chibig and Highland Park. So you'd seen the video for Chibig and the pros and cons of that. Pros and cons is a bad way of putting it. Like the things I liked more and the things I might have tweaked. We're now going to look into Highland Park, do the same sort of thing, play that round and come up with the big picture thoughts. Now, when I played this one first time, things that really stood out to me were I could remember a lot of the holes. Like and in a contest, I think you have to have that memorability. I really liked the flow of the routing. You went from short four to three to long four. There's a lot to recall. I thought the land movement was really interesting. I really like the bunkering. After multiple rounds, I played 2 rounds on this one, possibly three. I can't remember. I think because this one's a little. I might have played one more on this than the other. I can't remember. Haven't played this pin though. Things I liked a little less. The water usage in spots. There are a couple of sightlines that were missed. I felt I didn't love 18 in particular. A couple of the par threes were kind of a little samey as well. Not samey, but like they just didn't live up to some of the other holes, I would say. So what we're going to do in this one is we're going to play this, do exactly the same as what we did on Speak, and then kind of discuss at the end. And I might compare and contrast at that point and give you an idea of where I'm leaning before going in again. Okay, first one. Oh, yeah. And the other thing was I felt the greens could be a little bit spicier. So gentle first opening hole, like you can lay way back. It introduces the creek neatly. I would have lost the remove heavy rough. I just personally don't like the way it looks, but I understand why it's there. Generally, I really like the look of the course and the plot. I think the texture choices are great. Kind of unique look for a Parkland course, particularly with this bunkering. It's really nice. Now, as for where we play, well, if we play over this side, then we've got a worse angle into the green. So, and you're not dead. You're hitting a wedge in, but like it's a bit more challenging than playing from this side. So laying up makes much more sense. We're going downhill, load of fairway to aim into, hit a decent shot. Pulled it a little bit, but that's no bad thing. I think bunker layering and sculpting here is excellent. I like the way the flag is kind of set down in these three bunkers. I think that's pretty cool. I might have liked to see that right hand bunker just a touch more, but I'm okay with it. All right. Something just in then. Pulled it a little bit, but because I took the good angle off the tee, like you've still got a decent look at birdie. The surfacing's really nice. I I mean, noticing this seems a little odd how we cut the fairway in there, but I think I'd have probably gone with fairway all the way around. But I'm okay. Again, that's one where I think it's like a little nitpick. I'd say this as a first hole is kind of similar to Chibi because I'd call this like if I were doing a match, I'd call this even. Probably, I think they both do their thing pretty well. They just get you away, gentle to start the round. There's enough interest to keep you honest, but neither necessarily blows me away. Second hole, love the bunkering. Love that we're just above this green. Works nicely. I think you get the real on this course and Chibig a real interesting similarities. You get that connectedness between tee and green, which I think is huge. It gives you so much. It really makes it feel like a continuous round of golf rather than just here's one hole and then you're teleported to another set piece, which I've always disliked. Bunkering good. I think the green. I was going to say I played pins here and I say here. Front portion of the green could be amped up. This is a slightly more challenging pin. I do think some of the green contouring could maybe be smoothed out a little bit. So you see how there's a lot of raise and lowers going on. You get a really fast break heading into a very slow one. Like that's where lots of raises and lows and not so much flattens are. And you have to be really careful with that in this game because the reason is because they've improved how the green grids render on PC. So we actually see all of the breaks that PS4 guys saw, but we didn't. So it's not so much that the sculpting's changed. It's just that we actually now see the effects of it where we didn't before. Really cool looks across the course. I like the housing around it. It feels very natural, and like the property line cuts in a couple of times. I like that's been done because that comes into play a bit more later. But yeah, I think this course really belongs. It understands its environment. Yeah, just gets it. Now, is it trying to do that much flashy stuff with the planting? No, not really. But I think it does really inhabit the place it's trying to be. Interesting sculpting on these three bunkers. Very different. Um, really ramping up the challenge with this tee shot. So a long par four, and we've chucked a central bunker, and I think I'd have probably lost or made this one a little bit smaller, given how easy the first few tee shots. It just feels like this might punish shorter drivers a little too heavily, because if you can't make it over here, then you're playing out here, and you're potentially laying up, and what have you got left in? 200 plus to. I mean, it's a fair. It's not the least accessible green, but it does have some dangerous spots back towards the back and on the right. Just always be careful with carry hazards, because like there's always going to be the guys who just can and the guys who just can't. That's why I might have shrunk that little bunker just a little, especially as three of them for most people aren't really doing that much. Kind of more visual. But I do like the tee shot. Other than that, I like the reverse camber that's kind of pushing you towards this. I think this is done really nicely. The little grassy area, land movement, I really like. I love the spine coming in at the front and the one leaving at the back. Right. Sculpting, I think, on this course has done really nicely. Bit of a side slope, which was always going to push me that way. Stay. Okay, and we do get a putt, at least. Yeah. Environment here, I'm going to say I would have it as a little better than Chabig, but there's still knocks that would put it just below excellent for me. So I think the heavy rough is part of it. I'd have thickened up the grasses here a little as well. But I do like the choice of textures that he's gone for, and I think that works really nicely. There's also a couple of trees that I think occasionally get a little bit big, which is definitely a Tannerism. A really cool loop of three that I think brings us back to the clubhouse as well. It's nice. This one's interesting because you can definitely drive it, and because the greens are slow, you can actually kind of stop it on there, which I hadn't thought you were capable of doing. I love the bunker back here that's kind of merged into the hill, gives it a bit of a dunesy sort of feel on this hole, even though it's a parkland course. And I think this was one hole that I really remembered from my first round. Just I thought there are a lot of really good options here and like interest of where you want to play for an angle. So if you want to get around that slope, you don't want to be too far down the right, which opens up, going further left opens up the green, but you've got pins tucked behind little bunkers. The green itself is subtle. Again, I would probably like the green just ramped up a little bit. I'm gonna have a go for it this time. I don't think I did when I played it on stream first time. And I haven't yet gone into the back bunker, so I'm interested as to how that plays. I've got some green to work with. Back bunker sculpting's pretty good. I think it'd be neat, a little neater, but not by much. Ugh, rubbish. Got a bit cute. You can see how you can quickly rack up a. If you sped up the greens a bit, you could quickly rack up quite a lot of strokes on this hole by just going over it. Okay, 5. We're going into slightly more wild land movement, but it does slow down. It does get a bit more gentle here. The sculpting around this bunker, there's some of this that looks a little awkward to my eye. Longer par 4 though. Again, you can kind of just, in this case, we can hit quite far down. That tee shot maybe offers a little less challenge than some of the others. This one in a different wind though, I've had to a back pin. Like, there's all sorts of scalability as to how this one plays, and you can bounce it in and off here. I do think the choice of fairway texturing around the green is maybe a little odd, or maybe it's just how it looks. I think it's probably a visual thing rather than it just being odd, just because you don't typically see something. I think this is another tip I would have for judges. If someone who is a really experienced designer does something, the chances are they do it for a reason. And just because it's something we haven't seen before doesn't mean we automatically discount it. So, like, obviously wants heavy rough if you miss long, whereas a little bit of fairway help to get you onto the green if you're left or right. That makes sense. Now, could it be accomplished a little bit more neatly? Possibly. Could you still have fairway long and maybe dip it off at the back? Probably, but it's different. Like, it's what it's trying to accomplish. I think bunker layering here is excellent. There we go. Again, nice varied green site, like this one tucked between some little hills and sort of a saddle. I remember this is one of my favourite holes in the contest, I would say. The only critique I really have is that I can't see the creek, which is your main hazard, which is a real no for me. But I love the green site. I think it's awesome the way it sits, really naturally. I think the bunkering around it's great. Sculpting here maybe a little severe on the front right. But yeah, and I think for this one I'm going to end up going right, but oh no, we're not. And that needs to slow down. We got very lucky. Very lucky. But yeah, I think you have to show that creek. I'd also try to let a little bit of sun through if you possibly could, rather than it being all in shadow. A minor thing there, definitely. I think the variety of sizing on the bunkers also blends really nicely as well. You've got some bigger ones, some less. Grass planting looks really good. I might like it a little bit thicker in places, but it works. And that little back bunker's fun. So another texturing thing that looks a little odd, but I think works really well, is this where you've done the light rough around the bunkers. It would be very easy to try to make that neat and hit here. And yeah, I kind of think it works better the way it is. Like, okay, phew. The elevation change made me really think about that. So that's one as a par five where I think actually that's got a lot of variability to how it plays depending on what you do off the tee. And as with any par five, we've got to be looking when we judge it of if you miss your tee shot, what do you do next? Is it just hit as far as down as you can? Are there different options for layups, etc., etc.? Okay, seven's a fun tee shot. You ideally want to get down to here, or you can end up high right and you've got some interesting land movement. I don't know how. One other judge kind of questioned how strategic this really is when you're basically just hitting down a hill, or whether it's just a fun shot. And like, I think it kind of falls into the category of there's a little bit of strategy, but mostly it's just a fun shot. There's a place for that. I really enjoy it, and I think the low profile green site fits really well. But yeah, like I wanted to be further left. I ended up getting there, but is it the most like challenging tee shot? No, but it's a fun one to hit because the way the ball moves when it hits the ground and rolls. Okay, 8. This was one I didn't love when I played it first time, and I've since played it another way. I just hit straight down here. For this pin's very tucked, which I'm not necessarily against, because I think you have options in like it's a video game. We have to manufacture difficulty a little bit. I mean, you're gonna have people complaining about this pin, and you know you will. But I think the things that the things I might have changed would have been if you've got a tier falling off this way and you've only given us like 5 yards, try not to make it immediately flow off the other way. Would be a little knock. But the greens are pretty benign. Now I can go over here, but I'm playing into a bad angle. Genuinely makes sense, unfortunately, to hit down here because there's no real danger. The tree's not really in my way, and I've got a better angle at that pin. I'm slightly between clubs, but okay. Light rough chip kind of up here. I think that's one where the tee shot is just a little bit penal on one side, and then on the other side, it offers us. You've got to do it one or two ways. If you're doglegging around another hole, you've got to make sure that people aren't going to go this way. And yeah, in real life, you would say no, you just can't do that, or like there'd be a local rule or what have you. But those are often viewed as awkward design. I think either you give up the tee shot a little bit more on here, or you put some random bunkers in play here that aren't going to be in play off this tee shot, or you angle the green more severely so that it's not receiving a shot from here. Unfortunately for this pin, because you're protecting so much against being on this side of the fairway, going as far right as we possibly can off the tee made more sense. So it kind of exaggerates a little bit. Not a definitely not a bad hole, just one where a couple of things may, and like there's people will always try and find shortcuts, and I try not to use them as much as possible. A really good example of bad judging that I would see are, thankfully we don't see it so much anymore, people pointing out that the tee's not flat. Nobody cares. Tees in real life aren't flat. Yeah, if loads of them aren't, then maybe it's a case of like sloppiness, but just because it's something you can see that is not perfect doesn't mean it's a good thing to pick up on. Because it doesn't really require any thought. Oh, that's gone way right. Okay, found a little bunker. The very fast was the shot. I've really loved this par three ever since the first time I played it. I think it sits so beautifully. The bunkering's great. The green is a little bit ragged, and one little thing I am seeing is the surfacing around the greens is a little awkward. Partly it's because the bunker brushes are digging into this. They don't dig into light rough in the same way they do dig into green surfaces. You can get around that with splining them. You lose a little bit of the shapes, but you can do it. So that's becoming like a, rather than a thing we've noticed once and we just note it down as an absolute, that's now like, yeah, we've noticed that a fair few times. Okay. I like the green site on this one. I've played this a couple of times. I like the green site. I do like the danger here. I think the sculpting could perhaps be a little neater, but I do like it. I don't really think I need to go for it. I can just hit back here. This tree right next to me is also quite giant. But I can hit a 3-wood and centre of the fairway or what have you. I guess. Yeah. None of this is saying that it's a bad hole. Because I did have, like, I have options off the tee as to where I want to hit it and why. Just seems immediately less apparent why I would go where. And that's not necessarily it's a bad putt. Not necessarily a knock. It's more just a, we'll kind of have a look at that hole again next time and see, like, because golf holes can reveal themselves over multiple plays. Like, for certain pins you go this way, for certain pins you go that way. This green's a good example of, I think it's a bit big and could use a bit more slope, but it's one of the more heavily contoured on here. I do also wish it used that ridgeline just a little bit more. As is, we're just going to hit somewhere down here, make sure we get nowhere near the bunker. Even then, you kind of come close. love the way it's just at grade, so like the same height here. I think that gives a really good look from about here. Bunkering looks great again. There's a little pocket to play into, very forgiving. Yeah, this was one of the par threes that didn't do as much for me first time round. I think this hill, the grasses for a start are really big. I think you'd benefit a lot from sizing them down a little bit, making them a little bit thicker, or just having a couple of bushes or something up there. I felt this hit the hill on the right, the left, sorry, it hit. Don't know, it didn't quite work for me visually, and it could have done. It just needs a little bit more in there to make it pop. The green itself is good. Par 3 itself is good, just doesn't grab my attention as much as 9 and 15. That's kind of it, where I was coming at it with those beforehand. I think I don't love the big blowout bunker behind the green. I think it would, and I appreciate that's on a different hole, but I think this would look so much better if you couldn't see that. But again, I don't know how you deal with that. Probably lowering the tee would help, raising the green a touch maybe, but it's already 8 feet up. So part of the judging stuff will be me also having conversations with myself and trying to work out what I think. Totally normal. But interesting pins. Yeah, you could see the Jurassic grass just behind our guy. Like, you want to try and avoid that as much as possible. Oh, I didn't hit it. Really good views over the rest of the course there. I think that looks really good. And like the way the creek is incorporated into different golf holes, I think is really interesting. It runs through and you kind of see it repeatedly and then it becomes that lake pond thing. Again, you've got the tee right next to the previous hole, like sign a really good, efficient routing. So this one we want to hug the high side a little bit more and deal with these 3 bunkers, which very artfully placed and sculpted. I think those work really nicely. Not a ton of width, so kind of if you hit the fairway, you've got a pretty good look. It's more I'd say that one's, you've got a bit of strategy, but it's more kind of a setup shot into this green. Definitely one of our more challenging shots in. Love the layering of this green low and this green high that we've already played in that tee that was 7. I think the way it's worked around the property has been really interesting. Again, sign of a good routing is it's bringing us back to places we've played before and you see them from a slightly different place. That's the first time I've really clocked those greens right next to each other, or at least can really remember that I have. I've tried. Challenging hole. Okay, 14 is going to split opinion. Because I like the concept. I wish the trees were pulled back just a little bit. Because the overhang here, I think where you've got the trees is great. The fact that this one juts out a little bit maybe makes it a touch video gamey. But I do like here's a tree line, you have to go around it and you might run through. If you do run through, in this case, you get a worse angle and you're hitting from light rough. It's not impossible, it's just more difficult. I think I've run through every time I've played this one and tried to hit the same shot and failed every time. It's not necessarily a comfortable question, but it does ask a good question. Now, one thing, there will be some people who despise this hole, but we could easily lay up to here with no problem, have 150 yards into a very accessible pin. You may not want to do that, but we could. I could play further and have a wedge in and still hit a dead straight shot. As is, I try to take on a little bit much, try to get the sand wedge, lob wedge in, and that's our result. But for every kind of inch you stray away from this boundary, you get a worse result, worse angle, worse shot in. I wonder whether you needed the bunker. just trying to work out where the bunker is in relation to the tee. I guess it's to stop people bouncing off the hillside. Probably. I don't mind it. Anyway, like I said, I think it's a good hole. Is it going to be everyone's favorite? Nope, far from it. But also, the way this one uses trees, they're on a boundary line. They make a ton of sense. Like, I'm just going to leap into this. So, those being there would have been planted partly for safety reasons. That's like the limits of the course and where it had them. Like the fact that it's out of bounds makes sense. You can avoid the out of bounds, so again, makes sense. It's not causing any danger. You're just hitting into trees that are off the property. Like I am completely fine with this. This would be how out of bounds would be done in a course in real life. It's sensitively done. Now I do think I might have taken the trees in just a little, but I don't mind it. And that's kind of the justification for that one. Because I know there will be people who dislike this hole immensely, and yeah, there's reasons why it works versus why it doesn't work on other courses or holes. Okay, 15. This has been a par 3 that I've really liked. I think it layers the bunkering beautifully. A long par 3 immediately provokes interest as to where you're landing the ball. Probably got one of the tougher pins on here, so we want to land it just over the bunker. I think I would have lost this slope. Just feels like it's taking it away from here in a way that you don't really need it to do. And I pushed it. It was good for distance. Shame. Again, really like little things, but the bunker lips look incredible. Really, really good work. Because scaling those grasses and getting them right and still seeing the flag beyond is not like that's not quick work. That's taken time. But yeah, really good hole. Okay, 16. So this is where we get to that blowout bunker. Just not sure you needed it. I think losing that would have made a world of difference for 12. And you could have just gone with fairway running down into heavy rough or little smaller bunkers like you've done elsewhere. It's not, of all the bunkers on the course, this one's doing less for me off the tee anyway. Now, again, strategically, there's like kind of the closer you play to that bunker, the better shot you have in, better stance, and all of that. I don't love that this is blind. It's kind of a sometimes you do have them. And this green is, I would say, probably my least favourite on the course. It's got one big feature, but then the rest of the green is just kind of giant. It does have OB long, so I like that that's making me think about doing this. I'm still going to do it, but I like that there's a risk associated with it. I would have liked to have been able to see this, but it is what it is. Yeah, I just think this green could have been more focused than it is. It's just kind of it's very big and very long, and I don't mind that, but I'd like it to have some slope on a par 5. It was a bad decision, and we knew it. It's fine. The best bad miss it could be. At least it didn't go long. Again, like boundary line is close enough that you think about it, but not tight up against the green, which I really appreciate. It's only really there for big, very bad misses. Cool look down over the second hole there. It's good to have a little callback to that before we play 17 and 18. Barely touched that putt. And the very bright lights in bright sunlight always makes me chuckle. Okay, 17. Now, I remember saying on the results stream that I felt 16, 17, 18 limped to the finish line a little bit. I don't think that about 17. I can't recall why I said about 17. 16 and 18, maybe a little. So this one, more of a hog's back, where you want to be off the tee kind of depends on pin. So for this one, I think down here, middle's fine generally, left would be great. I can see why you might get critiques on the land movement. Does it feel totally natural given the style of course and like this big hog's back here? Maybe fighting the land a little bit. So I could see critiques on this one. Same here, it's quite extreme. I do like it. I would have probably sat the green down a couple of feet. Much more. Something up there is good. Yeah, still can't hit putt hard enough on these greens. And then 18. Now, my major issue with 18 is you just hit up here because it's very short mown grass, and particularly for this pin where even if I play right, I get a worse angle. I did that on my first playthrough. I can't make myself do it again, but I think you can see why I would. And like that's something you've got to be again aware of when you pinch fairway this much. Got to be aware that there's like that's going to force people to go a different direction. As is, we're gonna be good. We're gonna play this way, but I think that's a knock on this hole because I like it as is. I think it's a good approach in. It's just the fact that you can go way left and it makes it a much easier hole. The green is all sorts of boldly contoured, and I kind of wish the greens had done this just a little more in places. We can talk about that in a minute. Yeah. It's a good closing hole with one big flaw. Okay, so that finishes Highland's third round, I think. I think I've had 3 on both of them. Pretty certain there's one pin set I haven't played on either. So, talking through this one, pros. There's a lot of very memorable holes. Now, it has the main thing working for it that Chabik didn't necessarily have was the bolder land movement. However, Chabik had lots of water holes. This also had the water, but in slightly different formats. So you had the lake, you had the creek, and I'm pretty sure I can, at this point, name pretty much every hole very quickly. So one's that gentle handshake opener, 2 the par 3 going up, 3 the long par 3 with the fall off right, 4 the drivable-ish par 4, 5 is the long par 4 to that green bench in the saddle, 6 is the one where you play down towards the creek, it's a split fairway, really like that one. 7, the one where it's that fun tee shot down and to the left. 8 is the pinched fairway that I don't love and I played out right to that tiny pin. 9's the short par 3 that we really loved. 10. Front 9 definitely went quickly. 10's very short. Oh, yeah. 10 plays back down alongside the lake. 11. What was that? 11. Oh, we're losing it a little bit. I was feeling so confident. The back 9 does do slightly less for me than the front does. I will say that. Not sure I totally remember 11. Oh, no. 11's the blind tee shot over the ridge, and then you've got the ridge line cutting in. 12, the par 3 by the water again. 13, we then play back down to the lower of those 2 green sites. I want to say a longer 4. Yeah, 509. 14's then the one around the trees. 15, long par 3 that we played down. 16, long par 5, the really big green that I don't love quite so much. 17, the hog's back. And then 18 is that one with the water on the right. Now, part of the reason that I can remember those holes really well is because there's loads of big features in there and there's things that make that specific hole memorable. And that's what I think, like 10 and 11 were the 2 that I stumbled with a little bit. And even then, 10 was the one with the water left, and I can remember that very vividly now. I remember which one it was. And 11's the one where it's that drive over the blind drive over the hill, which again is a memorable feature. Where I think this course's strength really is it probably has more of those memorable holes than any other course in the contest, I would argue. There's very few, I think, that I'd back myself to go that quickly through all 18 and remember them. Other pros, I think it takes a lot of chances. It's really variable. You go from short to long to mid, like the variety of them. And then you get these big greens and you get these small greens and you get the heavily contoured ones and you get the soft ones. Like there's a lot of good there. I think environment, it knows its place really well. And there's a lot of really good holes in there. Like, I think 6 and 7 are two of my favourites in the contest. I think 6 is just an awesome golf hole. 7 is just fun to play. But then there's no really weak ones, I would say, other than don't love 16. I think there's a few issues with the tee shot and the approach shot. Like, it could be a great hole. It just needed a little bit of refinement on the green and that bunkering off the tee, I think. I don't love 18 for the big issue off the left being one. And I think 10 and 11 are a little less good than some of the others. And the same kind of true with 2 and 12. Um, they're not quite at the level, but they're still really good golf holes. Like, all of everything that it's doing is good. Um, environment, very close to excellent for me. It's really good. It knows its place, and it executes that at a very high level. Technical work, there's a couple of little bits around the greens that I think surfacing. I saw enough that I feel that could be neater. Um, it doesn't affect playability, and I think playability is the more important thing than like everything looking technically neat and sound. But you could polish a little bit of that as well. Um, my main knocks, I guess, I would still love the greens to have a bit more contour. There's some big greens that don't do a ton. 1 and 16 being really good examples. 11, a bit of another example that could do a little bit more with what it's got. Um, then I think just some of the land movements may be a little bit abrupt in places. I'm thinking short right on 6, the hogs back on 17. Like, I can see critiques there. And this will be one where I end up probably discussing with other judges, seeing what they think, if there's anything else that brings into final playthroughs. At this point, it's hard to call. My gut instinct is I think Highland Park has a little bit more of an edge because of the memorability of individual holes. Um, but Chabik did some stuff that was really unique and interesting. So I definitely want 4 rounds on each, which means I got 2 more to play. No, 1 more to play. And in that one, what I'll probably do is match play, which is not a full on, and I'll do that next episode. That's not like a full on easy decider of like this course wins one up. But what I do is I play hole 1 at Highland, hole 1 at Chabig. Which one's better? Well, the way I'll do it is front 9 at one, then the hole 18 at another, then back 9 at another, and ultimately decide which one's better. And it's not a good, it's not a hard and fast thing of like, if you do that, whichever course wins is better. But it's a really good prompt for assessing just how much better certain holes are than others, and giving you a slightly different way of looking at 2 different courses. Um, so yeah, that's this one. Like I say, I think it is really close. I'm leaning slightly Highland at this stage, but it is really close, and I definitely want 4 rounds to be sure. Hopefully useful. Let me know what you think in comments. We will be back with one more, and see you soon.